Oh, hello there. I'm Senior Xenobiologist Korvik of the Galactic Federation Science Division, and boy, do I have a story that'll make your tentacles curl. You know how we've always ranked species across the galaxy based on their potential threat level? Well, grab your nutrient drink and settle in, because I'm about to tell you why that system got turned completely upside down. For those of you who skipped Galactic Politics 101, and honestly, who could blame you with Professor Cusick's lop droning on for 6 hours straight? The Galactic Federation has been classifying all sentient species on a scale from 1 to 10 for nearly 3,000 cycles. Level 10 species, like the silicon-based Krondar with their diamond-hard exoskeletons, or the gaseous Vorcillians who can literally dissolve you from the inside out, will get the highest security protocols. Makes sense, right? You don't invite a Krondar to a glass house party unless you're planning a major renovation. Then we have your mid-tier threats, the telepathic Kolari, who can't actually control your mind but sure love to convince everyone they can. The hyper-intelligent Zorlians, whose diplomatic strategy consists of calculating exactly how many ways they could theoretically obliterate your planet, you know the type. Every gathering of the Galactic Council looks like the universe's most dangerous cocktail party, with everyone sizing each other up while pretending they're just admiring your ceremonial garments. And then we have level 1. The AW, look at the cute little sentients trying to participate in galactic politics category. Species so fundamentally non-threatening that we let them wander around our most sensitive facilities without escort. Species we invite to diplomatic functions mostly as a conversation starter. For 300 cycles, this prestigious bottom-tier position was held by the Flupians, literal living pillows whose evolutionary defense mechanism is to hope you'll feel too guilty to harm something so adorably helpless. But about 20 cycles ago, the Flupians got bumped to level 2. Why? Because we discovered humans. From the unassuming planet Earth in some backwater spiral arm of the Milky Way. When our scouts first encountered them, the data seemed like a cosmic joke. No natural armor, no deadly venom, no telepathy, shape-shifting, or ability to manipulate fundamental forces. They couldn't even survive in most planetary atmospheres without their cute little breathing apparatus. The classification committee barely spent 10 minutes before unanimously declaring them a level 1 species. And oh, how that decision puzzled everyone. The Krondar ambassador nearly cracked her exoskeleton laughing when the first human delegation arrived at the Galactic Council. The Zorlians ran countless simulations trying to understand how such physically unimpressive creatures had achieved interstellar travel. Even I questioned the data. There had to be something we were missing. Trust me when I say this, we were missing everything. And it took a disaster of interstellar proportions for us to realize just how wrong we'd been about the species that always preferred to sit in the back. The first official meeting with humans was, to put it mildly, underwhelming. I was there, taking notes for the xenobiology archives, watching as their delegation stepped off their surprisingly primitive spacecraft. 5 of them, dressed in what they called formal attire, which looked like fabric cocoons with decorative strips of cloth dangling from their necks. No wonder they needed clothing. Their skin was as protective as wet tissue paper. Ambassador Jackson Price led the human delegation, a medium-height specimen with a disarmingly friendly smile. The Krondar representative, General Thrak, towered over him by at least 2 meters, her crystalline limbs gleaming under the ceremonial lights. The contrast was almost comical. High Chancellor Zux Voon of the Vorcillian Confederacy literally had to compress his gaseous form to avoid engulfing the humans entirely during the traditional greeting ceremony. "Welcome to the Galactic Federation," Supreme Counselor Malavax announced, her 6 eyes blinking in asynchronous patterns that indicated mild amusement. "We are pleased that your species has achieved the minimum technological requirements for membership." Price just smiled wider. "Thank you for having us. We're excited to learn and contribute however we can." That became the theme of the entire 3-day conference, humans being extremely polite, extraordinarily agreeable, and astoundingly unassertive. when the Federation's Security Council suggested humans might be best suited for observational roles. In galactic peacekeeping, they nodded enthusiastically. When the Resource Allocation Committee relegated Earth to the lowest priority for trade route establishment, they thanked them for the thoughtful consideration of our developing economy. Are all humans so acquiescent? I asked Dr. Meera Patel, their xenobiology specialist, during the welcome banquet. She laughed, a strangely melodious sound. We're just happy to have a seat at the table, Dr. Korvik. We're newcomers here. It makes sense to listen and learn before we start making demands. Their delegation asked for only one thing during the entire conference: permission to establish small human outposts on various member worlds for cultural exchange purposes. The request seemed so benign that it was approved without debate. Why wouldn't we allow these harmless creatures to scatter throughout the galaxy? What possible threat could they pose? I'll never forget the final day of the conference, when the Federation Council was assigning official roles to all member species. The Krondar would lead military operations, naturally. The Zorlians would head technological research initiatives. The telepathic Kulari would handle diplomatic negotiations. And the humans? Earth representatives will serve as consultants and observers across all departments, Malavax declared. Their limited physical capabilities make them unsuitable for leadership positions, but their enthusiasm is charming. Perhaps they can assist with organizing our archives and managing routine administrative tasks. I expected outrage, or at least disappointment. Instead, Ambassador Price nodded thoughtfully and said, "We're honored to support the Federation however we can. And if it's all the same to you, we're quite comfortable with positions that allow us to observe and learn from the back of the room." Several council members chuckled at this self-deprecating remark. The Zorlian representative, Logician Prime Erix, muttered something about humans understanding their natural place in the galactic hierarchy. If only we'd paid more attention to the glint in Ambassador Price's eyes when he said that, or noticed how the human delegation exchanged subtle glances. But we didn't. We were too busy congratulating ourselves on welcoming these quaint, fragile creatures into our grand federation and patting ourselves on our various appendages for our magnificent benevolence. And so, humans quietly took their positions in the background of galactic politics, watching, waiting, learning everything about us while we learned almost nothing about them. It happened during what should have been a routine diplomatic mission to the Cygnus Arm. The Federation's flagship, the Harmonious Convergence, was transporting delegates from 12 species to negotiate mining rights with the newly discovered Felix Collective. I was aboard as the xenobiological consultant, in case the Felix biology presented unexpected diplomatic challenges. The human contingent consisted of just 3 individuals: Senior Observer Marcus Reed, Cultural Liaison Daphne Wong, and Technical Advisor Jamal Bennett. They were, as usual, seated literally at the back of the command deck, quietly taking notes and occasionally whispering among themselves. We were passing through the notorious Scarlet Nebula, a region known for its navigational challenges, but considered mostly safe by Federation standards when the attack came. Proximity alert. 3 vessels approaching at combat speed, shouted Navigation Officer Krillix, her quills bristling with alarm. Supreme Commander Vraxon, a level 9 Krondar warrior whose carapace had deflected over 100 assassination attempts, immediately took command. Raise shields, prepare defense systems, identify hostile vessels. The view screen flickered to life, revealing 3 brutal-looking ships bearing the unmistakable insignia of the Karak Raiders, the most feared pirates in the sector. My primary heart nearly stopped while my secondary one began pounding erratically. The Karaks were notorious for their brutality, often selling captured diplomats to the highest bidder or worse, harvesting valuable biological components from exotic species, like, say, a xenobiologist with particularly rare optical glands. They're jamming our communications and our hyperdrive initiator, reported Chief Engineer Zorn TA, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with stress patterns. We can't escape or call for backup. The command deck erupted into controlled chaos. The Vorsilian ambassador compressed himself into combat density. The Q-Lari delegates joined minds to amplify their telepathic capabilities. Two Zorlian analysts began rapidly calculating defensive strategies, their 14-fingered hands flying over control panels. And the humans? I happened to glance back at them, expecting to see panic, perhaps tears. Their species was known to leak saline solution from their visual organs when distressed. Instead, I witnessed something inexplicable. They looked calm. No, more than calm. They looked focused. Senior Observer Reed had stopped taking notes and was quietly studying the tactical display. Liaison Wong had casually removed her formal jacket, revealing surprisingly well-muscled arms for such a small being. Advisor Bennett had moved to a console and was rapidly accessing ship schematics. "May I suggest something?" Reed's voice cut through the commotion, so unexpectedly firm that several delegates actually turned to look at him. Supreme Commander Vraxon flared his armored crest dismissively. "This is hardly the time for human input. Please return to your designated safety area." Reed nodded politely but didn't move. "Of course, Commander. Just thought you might want to know that the Karak Raiders have a known vulnerability in their shield configuration. A properly timed burst at the junction between their forward and lateral shields could. I do not need tactical advice from a level 1 species." Vraxon thundered. "Security, escort the humans to the safe room immediately." Two Dracovian security officers moved toward the humans, but froze mid-step when the ship suddenly shuddered violently. "They've locked on a tractor beam," Zorn-Ta shouted. "Hull breach imminent on Deck 7. They're going to board us." The Zorlian's probability matrix flashed an alarming conclusion on the main screen. 92% chance of successful hostile boarding. 78% chance of complete capture of the vessel and all personnel. Commander Vraxon raised his ceremonial battle blade. "All combat-capable delegates, prepare to defend yourselves. We will show these pirates the combined might of the Federation's strongest species." I looked back at the humans again. They weren't rushing to arm themselves like the others. Instead, they were huddled together, having what appeared to be a quick, intense discussion. I caught fragments of their conversation. "Standard Protocol Omega?" Bennett asked quietly. "Too many civilians," Wong responded. "Minimal force approach then," Reed decided. "Wong, you take point. Bennett, find us a choke point. I'll handle comms disruption." Something about their tone sent a chill through all 4 of my spinal ridges. The humans weren't afraid. They weren't even concerned. They were preparing, methodically, like specialists about to perform a well-practiced procedure. The Raiders' docking alarm blared throughout the ship. Combat was imminent. And that's when I noticed something else strange. The humans were smiling. The first of the Karak Raiders burst through the emergency bulkhead on Deck 5, where most of us had gathered to make our stand. They were terrifying, even by galactic standards, 2.5 meters tall with enhanced exoskeletons, tactical implants gleaming beneath scarred hide, and an arsenal of illegal weaponry that would make a Krondar war chief envious. Their leader, a particularly massive specimen with a cybernetic jaw, leveled a disruptor cannon at Commander Vraxon. "Surrender your ship and delegates," he growled through a translator, "and we might let the crew live as labor stock." Commander Vraxon roared defiantly, his crystalline armor glinting, as he raised his battle blade. The Vorsilian ambassador expanded to his full gaseous combat form. The Q-Lari delegates joined minds, preparing a coordinated telepathic assault. The strongest species in the galaxy were ready to show these pirates exactly why they were classified as high-level threats. And then a small voice from behind us. "Excuse me, coming through. Pardon me. Just need to squeeze past. Thanks." To my utter disbelief, Liaison Wong was politely making her way through our defensive line, completely unarmed, moving directly toward the Raiders. "Get back, human," Commander Vraxon ordered. "Your fragile form will be vaporized." Wong smiled pleasantly. "It's all right. I just want to talk to them." She turned to the raider leader, who seemed momentarily confused by this tiny, soft creature approaching him without fear. "Hi there. I'm Daphne Wong, Cultural Liaison for Earth. I think there's been a misunderstanding." The raider leader barked a laugh that echoed metallically through his cybernetic jaw. "The misunderstanding is yours, meat sack. Step aside or be the first to die." "That's the thing," Wong said, still smiling. "I don't think either of those options works for us." Then her hand moved faster than my 4 eyes could track, and suddenly she was holding the raider's own blade, which she had somehow removed from his belt without any of us noticing. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, when we reviewed the security footage, we had to slow it down to 25% speed just to comprehend the sequence of events. Wong's body shifted into a stance that suddenly looked nothing like the posture of a diplomatic liaison. She executed a move that somehow used the raider leader's size against him, sending him crashing to the deck with a precision strike to what must have been a pressure point in Karak anatomy. Simultaneously, from ventilation shafts on either side of the corridor that I hadn't even realized could fit a sentient being, Reed and Bennett dropped directly onto 2 of the rear raiders. Reed landed with devastating precision, disabling his target's cybernetic weapons system with what appeared to be specialized knowledge of its weak points. Bennett, meanwhile, had somehow acquired a piece of ship piping and was using it with terrifying efficiency against 2 raiders at once. Defense points Alpha and Gamma compromised, Reed called out calmly, as if reporting weather conditions. "Wong, we've got 5 more hostiles approaching from the port corridor." "Copy that," Wong replied, now wielding the raider leader's own weapon against his companions with startling proficiency. "Bennett, can you secure our exit route?" "Already on it," Bennett responded, tapping commands into a stolen raider communication device. "Their ship security protocols are embarrassingly outdated." I stood frozen, my xenobiologist mind struggling to process what I was witnessing. These weren't the actions of administrative assistants or cultural observers. This was the coordinated response of what? Soldiers? Special operatives? Their movements displayed years of combat training, their communication indicated military precision, and most disturbing of all, they showed absolutely no fear. A raider charged toward me, disruptor raised. I braced for disintegration when suddenly Reed appeared, moving with impossible speed. He disarmed the raider with 3 precise strikes, then incapacitated him with what I later learned was a human technique called a sleeper hold. "You okay, Dr. Korvik?" Reed asked casually, as if he hadn't just saved my life using combat skills that should have been impossible for a level 1 species. Who are you people?" I stammered. Reed smiled enigmatically. "Just humans, Doc. Nothing special." Within 11 minutes. All 27 Karak raiders had been neutralized without a single Federation casualty. Wong had personally disabled 8 of them. Bennett had hacked into and disabled their ship systems, leaving them stranded and unable to call for backup. Reed had coordinated the entire operation while simultaneously protecting the Federation delegates from harm. The Federation's supposedly strongest species had barely participated in the conflict. The Krondar commander stood with his battle blade still raised, looking almost comically confused. The Vorsilian ambassador had partially dissipated from shock. The Qulari delegates were frantically trying to telepathically understand what they'd just witnessed. Wong approached Commander Vraxon, still polite as ever. "Sir, we've secured the raiders and their vessels. Technical advisor Bennett has sent a distress call through an encrypted channel to the nearest Federation outpost using the raiders' own communication system. Backup should arrive within 3 hours." And she added with a slight smile, "We took the liberty of downloading their navigation data. Looks like we've found the location of their main base. Might be useful for Federation intelligence." Commander Vraxon's mighty jaw literally dropped open. What are you people? Senior Observer Reed stepped forward, straightening his still immaculate uniform. Sir, I believe this would be a good time to discuss the inaccuracies in our species classification. But first, perhaps we should secure the prisoners. The journey back to Federation headquarters was uncomfortably quiet. The three humans had returned to their seats at the back of the command deck, calmly taking notes, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Meanwhile, representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species kept stealing nervous glances at them. Supreme Counselor Malavax called an emergency classification review immediately upon our return. I was assigned to lead the Xenobiological reassessment team, a task I approached with more trepidation than any research assignment in my career. These files can't possibly be correct, I muttered, reviewing the original human classification reports in my lab. My assistant, junior researcher Plex, hovered nervously beside me. What's wrong with them, senior xenobiologist? He asked. Everything, I exclaimed, gesturing at the holographic displays. Look at this. The original assessment team measured human strength based on weight lifting capacity, bite force, and exoskeletal density, none of which humans possess in any significant measure. They completely ignored speed, reaction time, endurance, and adaptability. I pulled up footage from the raid incident, running it at slow speed. Look here. Wong changes direction 4 times in a single second. And here Reed accurately targets a neural junction on a Karak raider, a species he supposedly had never encountered before. My investigation quickly became an obsession. I requested and after considerable bureaucratic resistance, received access to human historical records. What I found chilled my 4-chambered heart. Earth wasn't the peaceful, resource-rich paradise our scouts had reported. It was a death world. A planet with such extreme environmental variations that its inhabitants had evolved to survive everything from scorching deserts to frozen tundras. A world with predators so numerous that humans had to develop tools and cooperation just to survive their first evolutionary stages. But the most shocking discovery wasn't their planet's conditions. It was the humans themselves. Their history wasn't a steady progression toward enlightenment like most spacefaring civilizations. It was an unending chronicle of warfare. These creatures had spent millennia fighting not just their environment, not just their predators, but each other. They had developed combat strategies, weapons, and tactical thinking that made our military doctrines look like cultural dance performances. By the cosmic core, I whispered, reviewing footage of something called World War T. They had planet-wide conflicts. Multiple times. And then there was their biology. How had we missed so much? Humans possessed ridiculous redundancies too of almost every major organ, healing capabilities that bordered on regeneration, and an endocrine system that could temporarily boost their physical capabilities beyond all rational limits in crisis situations. Adrenaline, I explained to the classification committee, projecting biochemical diagrams. It's a hormone that activates during danger. It increases their strength, speed, and pain tolerance to levels that should be physiologically impossible. But our initial scans showed no natural weapons, objected Counselor Vex Noor. Because we were looking for claws, toxins, and armored plating, I responded. We completely missed the fact that their entire bodies are weapons. They don't need natural armor when they can dodge faster than most species can aim. They don't need venom when they've mastered the physiological weaknesses of every opponent they face. I took a deep breath before delivering my final analysis. Distinguished committee members, humans aren't a level 1 species. They're not even a level 5. Based on combat effectiveness alone, they should be classified as level 9, minimum. And we've been letting them establish outposts throughout Federation space for 20 cycles. All while believing they were harmless administrative assistants. The committee chamber erupted into panicked discussion. In the back row, a small delegation of humans sat quietly, politely waiting to be acknowledged. The Federation Security Council convened in the Grand Chamber, a room typically reserved for galaxy-wide emergencies like imminent supernovae or interdimensional incursions. Today, they faced what many considered an equally alarming crisis, the human question. I was there as scientific counsel, nervously organizing my research findings as the galaxy's most powerful leaders filed in. The Krondar High Command stomped around restlessly. The Zorlian logician Prime muttered probability calculations. The Kilari mindshare hummed with telepathic anxiety. And there, waiting patiently at the testimony podium, stood a single human female, Ambassador Lena Blackwood, Earth's newly appointed representative to the Federation. She wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, her only adornment a small silver pin shaped like her home planet. Despite being surrounded by beings who could crush, dissolve, or mentally dominate her with minimal effort, she appeared completely at ease. This emergency session will come to order, announced Grand Arbiter Krell, his massive tentacles slamming a ceremonial gavel. We are here to address troubling revelations regarding the human species and their apparent misclassification. Ambassador Blackwood nodded politely. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Grand Arbiter. We understand this situation has caused some concern. Concern? General Thrake of the Krondar slammed her crystalline fist down, cracking the reinforced table. Your species has been engaged in deliberate deception. The incident on the Harmonious Convergence revealed combat capabilities far beyond Level 1 classification. Ambassador Blackwood didn't flinch at the display of Krondar's strength. With respect, General, we never claimed to be incapable of defending ourselves. But you deliberately concealed your true capabilities, accused logician Prime Eric's. My analysts calculate a 99.87% probability that humans systematically downplayed their physical and tactical abilities during all previous interactions with the Federation. For the first time, Blackwood smiled. Not the humble, deferential smile we'd grown accustomed to from human representatives, but something sharper, more knowing. You're absolutely right, Logician Prime. The chamber erupted into shouts and psychic projections of alarm. Grand Arbiter Krell pounded his gavel repeatedly until order was restored. You admit to deception? He demanded. We prefer to call it strategic underrepresentation, Blackwood replied. And yes, Earth's government made a deliberate decision to downplay certain aspects of human capability when we joined the Federation. But why? I couldn't help asking. Why present yourselves as practically defenseless? Blackwood turned to me, and I was struck by the intelligence in her eyes. This was not the gaze of a Level 1 species representative. It's quite simple, Dr. Korvik. We observed how the Federation operates. Those species classified as physically powerful or militarily advanced are invariably assigned to the most dangerous missions, placed on the front lines of conflicts, and expected to serve as the galaxy's warriors and defenders. She gestured around the chamber. The Krondar lead military expeditions into uncharted space. The Vorcilians are sent to negotiate with hostile civilizations. The Zorlians are tasked with developing weapons technology. The pattern was clear. The more capable you appear, the more dangerous your assignments become. So you lied to avoid responsibility? Grand Arbiter Krell's tentacles writhed with indignation. No, Blackwood corrected firmly. We chose not to volunteer for roles that would place our people at unnecessary risk. Humanity has a long, painful history of warfare, Arbiter. We've spent thousands of years fighting each other. When we finally achieved peace on our world and looked to the stars, we made a collective decision. No more front lines, no more cannon fodder. She walked around the podium, addressing the entire chamber now. We observed your Federation and saw something familiar, a hierarchy, where the strong protect the weak, but also where the strong are expected to sacrifice themselves first. We'd played that game for millennia on Earth. We weren't interested in playing it on a galactic scale. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. So you what? Pretended to be weak so you could hide in the back? General Throck asked incredulously. Not hide, Blackwood corrected. Observe, learn, and yes, stay out of the line of fire whenever possible. She smiled again. On Earth, we have a saying, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. We chose not to stick up. But what about the raid? I asked. You could have remained hidden then. Let the level 9 and 10 species handle the threat. 3 reasons that wasn't an option, Blackwood explained, counting on her fingers. First, the tactical situation had deteriorated beyond what conventional Federation response protocols could address. Second, innocent lives were at immediate risk. And third. Her expression hardened slightly. Someone threatened our people directly. And that's when the gloves come off, she added, using what I assumed was a human idiom. Are there more of you? Counselor Vexnor asked nervously. Combat specialists like Wong, Reed, and Bennett, I mean. Blackwood laughed, a sound that no longer seemed merely melodious but now carried an edge that raised the bristles on my sensing ridges. Counselor, those 3 are cultural affairs officers with basic defensive training. They're not our soldiers. They're not our warriors. They're our diplomats. The implications of that statement caused several council members to physically recoil. Let me be perfectly clear, Blackwood continued, her voice taking on an authority that seemed to fill the vast chamber. Humanity has no desire for conflict or conquest. We joined the Federation in good faith, seeking peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit. We simply chose not to advertise certain aspects of our nature that have historically led others to exploit us or place us in harm's way. She straightened her uniform with a small tug. You may reclassify us as you see fit. We won't object. But know this, humans prefer to sit in the back of the room, observe quietly, and contribute where we can without drawing attention. However, her voice dropped slightly, should threat come to our people, or to those under our protection, we are fully capable of moving to the front. 1 full cycle later, I stood in the Federation classification archives, personally updating the human species file. My appendages trembled slightly as I entered the new designation, Level 9. Just below the silicon-based Krondar, but above the telepathic Kulari. The accompanying threat assessment noted, deceptively dangerous. Extreme caution advised. Seems a bit dramatic, doesn't it? Came a voice from behind me. I spun around to find Ambassador Blackwood leaning casually against the archive doorway, a data pad in her hands. Ambassador, these archives are restricted to senior xenobiological personnel only. I know, she smiled, holding up a newly issued security badge. The council approved my research request this morning. Apparently, they're quite eager to have humans study potentially dangerous species. Ironic, isn't it? I couldn't help but laugh, a nervous trilling sound. The entire Federation has been turned upside down since your revelation, Ambassador. The Krondar are demanding joint military exercises with human advisors. The Zorlians want access to your historical battle strategies. Even the Vorsilians are inquiring about human negotiation techniques. And how do you feel about all this, Dr. Korvik? She asked, approaching my workstation. I considered the question carefully, confused, fascinated, perhaps a little frightened. Your species concealed its nature so effectively that our best scientists were completely deceived. That's unsettling. Blackwood nodded thoughtfully. If it helps, we weren't being deliberately malicious. Just cautious. Earth history is filled with examples of how revealing strength often leads to conflict rather than respect. She glanced at my terminal, at the new Level 9 classification. This will change things for us, you know. No more sitting quietly in the back of council meetings. No more being overlooked for important committees. Will humans take a more active leadership role now? I asked. She laughed softly. That's not really our style, Doctor. We've been running our own leadership experiment for thousands of years on Earth. The results have been mixed at best. No, I think we'll still prefer to observe rather than direct, suggest rather than command. But now everyone knows what you're capable of, I pointed out. The Federation's perception of humans has fundamentally changed. True, she acknowledged. But knowing someone is dangerous isn't the same as making them your enemy. The Federation has plenty of powerful species who choose cooperation over conflict. We're simply joining their ranks officially, rather than unofficially. A notification chimed on her datapad. Security Council meeting in 10 minutes. They're discussing the Karak Raider situation. She straightened her uniform and headed for the door, then paused. Care to join me, Doctor? I could use a xenobiological perspective. I followed her through the corridors of Federation headquarters, noticing how other species now moved aside respectfully as she passed. No longer was she viewed as a quaint representative of a harmless species. Now they saw her for what she truly was, a diplomat from one of the galaxy's most formidable civilizations. As we entered the council chamber, I watched Ambassador Blackwood make her way not to the small chairs at the back where humans had traditionally sat, but to a prominent position at the main table. Despite their new status, she chose a seat not at the head, but halfway down the side, not leading, not following, but perfectly positioned to observe everything and everyone. She caught my eye and smiled as the meeting began. I finally understood what humans had known all along. True power isn't about being at the front of the room, loudly proclaiming your strength. Sometimes the most dangerous person in any room is the quiet one in the back, watching and waiting, the one nobody notices until it's too late. The galaxy's strongest species, I murmured to myself, are the ones smart enough to make you think they're weak.